Welcome to another edition of the Chrissy B Motep show, stream, podcast, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see in the thumbnail, we're here to talk about my favourite singer of all time, one of my mum's favourite singers. A lot of people who I know, they're one of their favourite singers, if not their favourite singer. Mr. John Kenneth Holt was born on the 11th of July, 1947 in Kingston, Jamaica. And since I've set up this YouTube channel, I've never done anything about John Holt, and he's my favourite singer. So, like it was his birthday last week, it would have been his 76th birthday last week, Tuesday, the 11th, exactly a week ago. And I wasn't able to do it last week because I was so busy and so on. Hence why you got a lot of, hence why you got a lot of shorts and so on. But I'm here today. I said I've got to prepare this. I kept cancelling the live stream for John Holt, but I said yes, today I'm definitely free and available, and I'll definitely do it today. So like I said, I hope you're all right. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're new around here, please subscribe. Hit the like button as well, because it helps with the algorithms, because YouTube loves the algorithms. They love when you like the videos, because it helps the videos to be shared out and so on. More views generates, of course, a lot more attention to our channel and to the video. I'm just going to reason, I've done documentaries of John Holt before on the radio. Some of you might have heard my radio shows on SLR. And I remember when John Holt died back in 2014, it was October of 2014. And I did a 3-hour show. I've got the tape here somewhere. Perhaps one day I'll get the facilities and upload it to YouTube for you to listen to that show. For those of you who never caught it, this is as I said, 2014. So this is 9 years ago, just after he passed away. And John Holt was one of the first reggae artists I was introduced to by my father. Was we had a friend living around the corner from us. We were at Vicarage Road at the time. Vicarage Road. I'm trying to remember if we were still at Baronet Road, because we left from Baronet Road in 1982, October of 1982. We moved to Vicarage Road, just around the corner. For those of you who know Tottenham well, Baronet Road is here, and then Vicarage Road just runs off. Then you've got Baronet Grove. There's a church there, Seventh-day Adventist Church. We used to be run by my godparents, the Casualtons. And Vicarage Road runs off it. And I'm trying to remember if it was just before we moved from Baronet Road, or just when we moved to Vicarage, because I was about 4 at the time, so I can't quite remember if it was when it was at Baronet Road or Vicarage Road. Anyway, our friend who lived on St Paul's Road, which is just off Baronet Road, they were friends of us, very good friends. Uncle Ken, Auntie Sis. Uncle Ken passed away. Auntie Sis is still alive, I think. They gave us an album from John Holt and the Paragons. It was at Studio One. It was a Studio One album, and it was late 60s, because I remember the songs. It was like Satisfaction was on it, Darling I Need Your Loving was on it, and some other songs like that. And I remember the very first time I heard any reggae music, it was definitely the first time, if not the first or the second. And my dad bought an album of Mr. Ken, Uncle Ken we call him. And we had it for a while, and then Uncle Ken, I remember coming back to the house and took it back. And I said, I've never heard this type of music before. I was only about 4, as I said, a wee nipper. So that was the very first time I heard any reggae music, and I was 4, and this was about 82. Yeah. And so I said to myself, wow. And then years later, I was hearing John Holt, because we had cassettes. Growing up in the 80s, I was used to commit cassettes and vinyl. CDs was there here and there, but it was mostly vinyl in our house and cassettes. We had millions of vinyl and we had millions of cassettes. And we had a Gram, we had a Hi-Fi, a Tachi, and then occasionally my dad or my granddad or even myself was playing. I didn't know what I was doing because I was too young, but I just put in tapes, and if the music the music mostly was nice because it's reggae music and ska. So I was playing and but I didn't know. I didn't have a clue who was singing it and what the song was, because I was still very young. And then years later, when I got to about, I would say 19, and then my father was this time. My father had moved out, and I was still staying with my granddad. And my father came back and he wanted to take some records with him, some of the records he left when we, at the house, at the old house. And so he said he was looking for a record, a John Holt record, but he said he couldn't find it. He said, I think the record, the album was called Before the Next Teardrop. It was on Click Records. It came out in 1976. A lot of those songs on the album were produced by Bunny Lee. And so my dad couldn't remember the name of the album. Yeah. And then I went to another spare room in the house, and I said, I wonder if this is but the record was out there, was out the sleeve. We had the sleeve, but we didn't have the record itself. Because we used to have a lot of house parties at that time. Because, in the 80s, especially Afro-Caribbean household, we had lots of house parties. And what will happen, in our house parties, people will come to the house in the parties and nick the records and go out underneath their sleeve and leave this empty sleeve lying around. And that used to happen a lot to us, and it's happened to other people as well. And so we were just left with the sleeve, and the record was out the sleeve, the actual record itself. So I said, Dad, look, is this the album you're talking about? And he said, oh, that's the one. And he went everywhere to try and find it, and he couldn't find it. And this is a bit before the internet bloomed, so this would have been about late 90s. About late 90s this was. And so, as I take off my glasses, I was doing something before I came on the stream, but don't need them at the moment. And so he took him ages to find. He went to Body Music at that time. Body Music was open at that time. He went to a number of other record shops in North and East London, and he couldn't locate the record. It's a pity now that the record has been released in CD now, but he likes his vinyl. But you can go online, as I said, that was around the time when the internet wasn't quite out yet. So this would have been 96, right? 96, 95, 96, 97. The internet was probably wasn't quite out. In some places had it, some places didn't quite have it yet. It was in that sort of transitional period when the internet was just coming on the scene. Only a few people had it. And so that was one of my first memories of being involved in any type of reggae music, listening to reggae music when I was 4, and then years later, my dad hunting for a John Holt album, the one with the next teardrop, and that got me into John Holt. And I started listening to John Holt more. Yeah, I'll go to record shops and ask the guys behind the counter, "Have you got any John Holt, please?" Then they'll give me a selection of CDs and albums to look at. Then I'll just pick and choose one what I want, what tickle my fancy, and I chose. I don't know if you can see, it's right here, you probably can't see it, but that's one of the first John Holts I bought, 1000 volts of Holt. There you go. Yep, one of the very first John Holt records I bought, and this was probably about 97 I bought that, and I can't quite remember where I bought it from. I think it might have been Body Music, or it might have been Racks Limited of Gladdy Racks. Yeah, in Stoke Newington. It was one of those two shops, because those were the two shops I used to mostly go to buy my records, you see. But John Holt, as I said, was born in Kingston. There's a bit of a confusion, because I initially knew him as John Kenneth Holt. But a few years ago, one of the very, very best DJs I've ever heard, probably the best DJ I've ever heard, Jesse James, the 7-time revival champion, calls him Kenneth Winston Holt. So Jonathan Kenneth Winston Holt. Yeah. So I didn't know that he had Winston in his name. I thought it was Jonathan Kenneth Holt. But I'm hearing that his name is Jonathan Kenneth Winston Holt. So there you have it. But I always go by what I first heard. So I'm going to go with Jonathan Kenneth Holt. Winston could be his christening name, or it could be one of his middle names. Born in 1947, and I said at the start. And he said he started to sing when his mother would take him to church. He was singing a church choir. That's why a lot of black people from America, from the UK, from the Caribbean, and mainland Africa started singing coming from the church, and being introduced to the church, and so on. And he said that he was very shy as a kid, and that in an interview he did some years ago, he said that he was very shy as a kid, but he had a very thin voice as a young boy. And a lot of the people in the church, they liked his voice. So he said that they would encourage him to sing more, to go to the front of the church and sing songs, and he wouldn't go. But he said because they wanted him to, he did it anyway. And he said after a while, they constantly wanted him to sing. And then he said he made him kind of wonder, wow, wonder why they want me to always sing. More than anyone else in the church, by the way. He was like the designated singer and a go-to person to sing on his own in a church. They'll pick hymns for him to sing, and he was singing them at the front of the church. And not long after that, he was about 12 now, Leslie Kong asked his mother, because he was so young, he was only 12 at the time. Leslie Kong, the prominent producer, one of the prominent producers in Jamaica at that time. This was 1962 when John Holt was 15. And he went to John Holt's mother and asked John Holt's mother if he could take him to the studio, you know. John Holt was now 15. When he was 12, he was in the church singing. And by 15, he sang his first song. It was a ballad. Forever I Stay. It's a nice song. Forever I Stay. Very good song. You can hear the young voice in John Holt. 15 years of age, his first song. And then not long after that, he recorded for Randy's. He sang a song with John Holt, with Alton Ellis. Rum Bumpers. I think when he done that song with Alton Ellis, he was about 16, 17, because it was done in a ska. So he would have been about 50. He would have been probably about 16, I would say. 16, 17, thereabouts, when he started singing. He sang with the great Alton Ellis and a ska, you know, Rum Bumpers for Randy's. Then after that, this was around the time that he joined the Paragons, or not long after that, he joined the Paragons with Tyrone Davis, Howard Barrett. Bob Handy was in the group at this time, the Paragons, but Bob Handy was having a clash with John Holt, and they were saying that John Holt had ego problems because he thought he was the best singer in the group, and so Bob Handy left the group because him and John Holt were loggerheads with each other. So Bob Handy left, and he left to go to Studio One, and that's where he became a solo singer, where he had albums like The Songbook and all those great songs like To Experience and etc. etc. Then John Holt joined with Howard Barrett, Tyrone Davis, and formed the Paragons. And of course, the Paragons were there before, and then joined the Paragons, and then they recorded for Duke Reid, and so many number one hits. The Tide Is High, you know, so many songs. I'm trying to remember some of the Paragons. So it's my favorite group because of John Holt. The Tide Is High, Fly Away Little Yellow Bird, which is successfully covered by Gregory Isaacs in the 70s. And so they did a medley of songs as well. And, Way to the Ball. So many great songs they did, the Paragons, for Duke Reid. And they got about 4 or 5 number ones in the year of 1966 and 1967. And then they went to Studio One. And this is where the album I was talking about earlier, where that more or less surfaced, because I believe when they went to Studio One, they did a cover of the songs they did at Treasure Isle. But this is now the reggae style, or the rocksteady going into the reggae style. And those were the songs I was hearing for the first time when I was 4, like I talked about at the start of the stream. And so the Studio One got the covers out of them. So they did The Tide Is High again for Coxzone. They did Way to the Ball for Coxzone. And of course, this is what kind of like broke U-Roy's DJ career, when he done the DJ interpretations over some of those Paragon songs for Duke Reid. And that's what that's how the birth of U-Roy came, and hence the birth of DJ music surfaced and came onto the Jamaican music scene in 1969, 1970. And then when the Paragons went to Studio One and did covers and some other songs, Darling I Need Your Loving and songs like that, for Coxzone, and Dennis Al Capone did covers over that. So it was Coxzone wanted Dennis Al Capone to be the Studio One version of Treasure Island U-Roy. And so that's how that happened. Just let me get a drink. Sipping some nice tropical juice there. And so, my brothers and sisters, the Paragons also recorded at its time for Lord Matador Daily. Equality and Justice was one of the songs they did, and U-Roy did a toast over that. Because a lot of these singers and musicians were freelancing. They were kind of label hopping from producer to producer, because there was no real contracts in Jamaica at that time. But Duke Reid and Coxzone, being the leading 2 studios, always make sure that their artists were loyal and tie them down. But occasionally, they allow them to go and record a song or 2 for a random producer because it was more money for them. Because at that time, they were just starting out the business not long after, you know, so there was no legitimate contracts as there is now, you know, and as there would be in the 70s, when the corporates got involved in the reggae music. And so as a result, that's why there's a lot of artists, reggae artists from that era, have passed away without any proper royalty payments because they never really, there was no contracts to sign. They just recorded for that label, for this label. But as I said, Drew Queen and Coxsone were the closest labels and studios that made artists, to actually tie artists down to their labels. But they still occasionally allow them to drift because if it meant they were going to get extra few dollars, you know, for a song, they allowed them, but they always came back to that label. You see, it was difficult for them because there was no, as I said, there's no, you know, terms and conditions. There was no copyright laws which were issued for music and for artists. No artist rights, no copyrighting laws, and that came later on in the 70s. And that's when it became a little more of a professional business. But in the 60s, it was bordering on professionalism because Coxsone said that he made it that way because he got artists to sign contracts. But even still, he's got artists to sign contracts. They still drifted and came back. And if someone's what they had to even do is change some of their names and the aliases. So, for example, say if John Holt was recording for Studio One now and he got a contract from Coxsone, he'll drift to Bunny Lee and call himself the artist or call himself a different name. But you can always tell by the voice that, oh, even though it says the artist or it's got a random name on the record label, you can hear it's John Holt. You know, so these are the sort of things that was happening. That's why sometimes there's a bit of confusion because I've heard DJs play a lot of records and they say, oh, it's this artist, but you know, it's not the artist. You know, it's a said artist, but he's only just changed his name. And now we know why they changed their names because they're under contract to a certain label. So because they wanted to eat some food and because maybe what they were getting at that label wasn't sufficient, they'll label hop and go earn extra money at that label, but they always come back to the said label. And so we're frozen. Anyway, brothers and sisters. So as I'm saying, so this is what used to go on in the recording industry in Jamaican music. You know, John Holt went commercial in the 70s with the album I just showed you. I'll show you again. The 1,000 Volts of Volt album, right here. You know, it got some lovely covers on it. You know, like Never, 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 Warden of My Life, Stone Out of My Mind, Baby I'ma Want You, and Help Me Make It Feel Like was his biggest hit to date. You know, a cover of Chris Christopherson's classic, also done by Gladys Knight and the Pips in 1972. This was done in 1974. I believe it got to number 5 in the charts, in the UK charts, in 1974. John Holt, and he got a lot of hits in Studio One in the early 70s. John Holt. He also recorded for Phil Pratt, you know. Strange Things was the #1 hit for him, you know. And Strange Hips was #1, what he done at Phil Pratt. He got so many hit records, you know. I Love I Can Feel was #1 for him, what he did with Coxsone Dodd. He went solo in 1970, John Holt, and he left the Paragons behind, and he went solo. And as he went solo, the hits continued. He recorded for Lord Matador Daily again now, this time as a solo artist. He did a song called Linger a While. This wasn't a hit, but it was a classic song. It was one of the songs we had, one of the records we had when I was growing up. It was on a Camel 7-inch. And I always used to love that record. And when my granddad got married to this woman from Jamaica, she just threw all the records out. I'm so annoyed to this day about all that. So I've had to slowly go back and buy back some of those records, which has cost me a fortune to do so, by the way. And I still haven't got back all those records we lost. I'm still trying to get some of them back online and in some obscure record shop around the place, but it's very, very, very difficult, brothers and sisters. And so John Holt continued, and he went with Tony Ashford, done that album I just showed you, you know, 1,000 Volts of Volt. He did 2,000 Volts of Volt as well, and he did 3,000 Volts of Volt. For 2,000 Volt was a mix, some was with Bunny Lee, some was commercial, and the 3,000 Volts of Volt he did around 1977. That was done around 74. The 2,000 Volts was done around 75, 76. And the last and final Volts of Volt, 3,000 Volts was done by Bunny Lee. Classic songs in that album, you know. And then he just continued to recorded for Channel One around this time. You know, Tribal War was a song he did for Channel One, which was originally written by Little Roy. It was covered by a lot of artists. He also did some songs. He did a cover of Have You Ever Been in Love for Channel One, you know. And he did a number of other songs for Channel One, you know. Trying to remember some of the songs. So many songs to remember. But, you know, the guy has got a lovely smooth voice. He said he was inspired by people like Nat King Cole, Brooke Benton, and those guys. That's why he said he loves the ballads, because those guys were ballad singers in America. And people like Johnny Ace, the tragic Johnny Ace. A lot of John Holt's songs he did in the early 70s when he went solo was covered and adapted from Johnny Ace. You know, like The Clock, for example, that was a Johnny Ace song, you see. He also did a lot of country covers, you know, people like Freddie Fender, you know, Before the Next Teardrop and songs like that, you know, like the album my dad was asking for. That was the name of the album. And he did a lot of songs on that, which were cover songs. He also covered some of Jackie Edwards' songs, Jamaica's premier balladeer in the 60s and the 70s. So John Holt was really inspired by a lot of balladeer singers and people, as I said, just mention those names, Nat King Cole, Brooke Benton, and so on, and many others, Johnny Ace, and so on. And in the 80s, he covered he covered more songs. He did lots of remakes of some of the songs he did at Studio One in the 60s, early 70s, when he went solo. And he recorded for Coxsone at that time, as well as he went back to Duke Reid as a solo singer. Did a lot of work for Bunny Lee in the 70s, as I mentioned. And as I was saying before, he tapped into dancehall. And that song he did, The Ghetto Queen, he said that he did that song because around that time he had a lot of degrading lyrics to songs. And he was saying that he wanted to big up the ladies. He wanted to make the ladies proud. So he said that what he would do at that time, he would endorse the ladies by singing songs to celebrate them and to big them up. So he said, look, I'm not going to sing degrading lyrics. I'm going to sing songs to big them up. So I'm going to say this lady or the ladies, excuse me, are the queen of the ghetto. So you're the queen of the ghetto. You're the queen of the ghetto, and so on. And he said those were songs as like a celebration of the ladies. He said he's a ladies' man, so why not sing songs to embrace the ladies? That's what he said in an interview some years ago. And so John Holt, you see why the ladies love him. The men love him because of his lovely smooth voice as well, and because he tackles hard-hitting subjects like tribal war, as I said. Tribal War, No Man's an Island is another song he did. Dennis Brown made that song popular, but that song was done in America by the Van Dykes, and it's been covered many times. No Man's an Island, and so many times. Johnny Clark did a version of it as well, I believe. No Man is an Island. John Holt did a wonderful version of it, and many other artists, reggae artists, done a version of it. And he carried on, the hits just carried on. Of course, in the 80s, he recorded for Jammies, did songs for Jammies, like he did a song, I think he did an adaptation from one of the Motown groups. I'm trying to remember, it's he did Huma Carpenter, I think it's the Four Tops, because I went to see him in 2001 at the Hammersmith Apollo, and he did that song, but he gave us a teaser because he didn't do the whole song. He came out with a line of the song. If I was a carpenter, would you marry me anyway? Then he left it, then he laughed. But we wanted him to sing the whole song, but he couldn't do it. He didn't do it. I don't know if because he was pushed for time, but he sang so many songs. He also recorded for Mario Muti, before I forget. Some of the best songs the critics reckon he ever done was for Mario Muti. And, you know, that song, Time is a Master, is considered, the album that came out, is considered one of the best songs. He did that album between 72 and 73. And Again, which was an Nat King Cole song, Time is a Master, you know, It May Sound Silly, all of those songs were on that Time is a Master album for Harry Moody. You know, it was reissued in the 90s. I've got the album, but I've only got it in cassette. I also badly want to get the album on vinyl or CD. I just can't find it anywhere. But they say seek and you should find. And so, brothers and sisters, you know, we to Sir John Holt for all those years of fabulous music. He passed away in 2014. And that was 9 years ago. So that was that would have been 9 years ago. That would have been 52, 62 to 14 would have been 52 years of splendid recordings. So we say thank you so much to Sir John Holt for being there, for being a knight, he's also a mentor to a lot of the artists. Then they sing his praises. He's been inspiration to many artists who try to sing like him or adapt a lot of his songs. He's my personal favourite singer. My mum loves him. There's so many people who I know, young and old, who love Sir John Holt, of other many different backgrounds, races, classes and creeds. They love Sir John Holt. And I went to see him at the Hammersmith Apollo in 2001. It was him and Ken Booth and Freddie McGregor, and a young singer opened for them called Limey. I don't know what's happened to Limey now. Freddie McGregor and Ken Booth are still alive. And I remember he brought the house down. It was so mesmeric. There were so many different people there. So many different backgrounds were there as well. Young and old was there as well. And John Holt, the peacemaker in the 90s, and he just mostly concentrated on touring. He's toured the world, and he's always been well received as one of reggae's icons, legendary figures, iconic figures. I can't say anymore. I'm doing a book, and hopefully he'll be in my book. And we'll celebrate him. I'll come in there maybe again in the future and do more shows. I might even do a John Holt top 20. You can't do a John Holt top 10. You have to do a John Holt top 20. So look out for that one. I'm going to do a lot of top 10s coming up very soon. So look out. I've mentioned it before, but I've not got around to doing it yet. But I will do it one day when the time is right. So brothers and sisters, don't forget to subscribe before you go out. Like the video. Look at all of our videos. We talk about an array of subjects. We talk about music. We talk about Black history. We talk about Africa. We talk about many different subjects, but as long as it's relating to Arab people, that's what we cover. So look at our videos. Some of them might be, as I said, we go out, they're varied. So we don't just stick to music. We don't just stick to Black history. We don't just stick to the Rastafari movement. We don't just stick to the Moors. It all ties in. It's all about the Black history and the Black experience and celebrating Black culture and Black liberty. So you take care of yourselves. As I said, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the videos. Take care. Hit the notification bell so that you know when we go live and so you don't miss anything. Take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you hopefully very soon. We're going to be posting very soon. Jackie Mitu's coming up on Thursday, so look out for the Jackie Mitu live stream in 2 days' time. Peace out, my brothers and sisters. Thank you so much once again.